So this Yes album, it's fucking garbage. I'm just kidding. No, it's not garbage. It's good. It's good. Prog has kind of become like our thing here on this channel. Today we're paying respects to our founding fathers, yet another pair of our founding fathers, with Yes's 90125. This is in a way kind of like a Yes reunion album, because they broke up originally after their tour for their previous album, and then they went off, did side projects. There was even one with Jimmy Page. They did their own little side project, which consisted of most of the members you hear on this band right now. There were so many ex-Yes members in cinema, they're like, shit, we're actually just Yes. So it's kind of like that meme where it's like you make a new group chat and you leave one person out of it.
I knew a few members like Chris Squire, so I was like, oh, let me just double check the members, and there's like, 50,000.
That's why Geddy was having a blast when he performed with them, because he's like, wait, I just have to play bass? Fuck yeah. If there ever were a influence for Rush, it would be this band. I know they were a huge influence on Dream Theater as well. That's even in their Apple Music bio. You can see it clearly in projects like Closer to the Edge, very similar to 2112, came out a little bit before then. So without further bullshit, Owner of a Lonely Heart. I think the most important aspect of the song is how well put together it is. The bass is prominent, but so is everything else. Mixing is really an art. I've experienced some of that myself with our Subdivisions cover, which you should go watch. But it also has a lot to do with the tone and the patch selection that they all choose to work together to stand out, but also give breathing room to their fellow bandmates.
Talk about a unique song. The number of different sounds that are produced from it. This album is definitely heavy on the synth. And this song is without a doubt a sing-along song.
That's funny actually that you mentioned that with the synthesizers, because originally they wanted to go get their first keyboard player to have this reunion album. He said okay, but then they asked him, okay, we want to try these synthesizers, we want to try, like the Moog, other stuff, and he said, oh, you youngsters with your fucking Moogs and your Oppenheimers and your newfangled bullshit. And so they're like, okay, Boomer, get the fuck out of here. So then they got this new guy, and he killed it on this album. Just like you were saying, the many cool sounds, like the old school radio effect in the beginning and the harp, just to name a few. The clean guitar with the heavy reverb that we see a lot on this project that rings throughout the background and gives a ridiculously spacey atmosphere. And they blend so many different sounds together. Like on this song, they blend 70s funk with classic rock and jazz. And I think we could nail this cover if we tried it.
I think we could, yeah.
We'd have to play like 15 instruments each, but we can give it a try. I give this one a 9.5.
I give it a 9.
Continuing the blend of sounds that we saw in the beginning of the record, this one blends some Hendrix-style openings with the 80s harmonies that we hear throughout the decade, and even a Bohemian Rhapsody-style section in the middle. Drummer Alan White stands out to me the most, leading to time signature changes in the upbeat that goes throughout the entire song.
The drum fill intro was a fantastic way to really draw someone into the song, and the guitar patch that was used was very interesting. And the steady bass line by Chris, and then the drums by Alan.
I give this one a 7.5.
Coming off of Owner of a Lonely Heart, very hard to do so, but I think they followed it nicely, so I give this one a 7.
Creative use in the sitar in the beginning. It's not used in just the conventional Middle Eastern style way. It gives a really bouncy feel to the melody.
Just like Owner of a Lonely Heart, I feel it's a sing-along song. And it has a really cool Eastern vibe for the intro of it, and a great bass run that Chris plays throughout.
The way they stay on time and work together, like we talked about in the beginning, they have 69,000 members. To be able to pull that all together, probably the most impressive aspect.
I like the interesting vocal effects, keeps a fresh feel to the song, and a great instrumental second half I enjoyed.
Big time standout for the upbeat feel. That also perfectly matches the lyrics. I give it an 8.
I give this one a 7.5.
I am thoroughly convinced, and no one can convince me otherwise, that the beginning of the song is to get rid of all the pop garbage listeners. That's what the first minute of the song is for. They're like, okay, let's just prog the shit out of them.
Yeah.
And then they'll be like, okay, are they gone? All right, now we can start the song.
Definitely a unique, interesting intro, but I think I agree with you totally. The intro really threw me off, because so far the first 3 songs were the poppy, like trendy songs, and then I was like, oh, this is something out of a different playbook.
And then they delivered the absolute banger of the album. The airy pad with the reverb acoustic creates this incredibly spacey vibe. Much of early Dream Theater influence in this one too. The heavy reverb, clean guitar,
yes,
along with the strings and the note progressions.
The follow-up of the drums and the guitar after the intro was perfect, and it had a really, really good rock guitar sound for the second half of the song. he changed the patch, and I think that really tied it all together.
The vocals, like most of this record, were the blueprint for much of the decade. Heavy Queen feel, but not as much as with the reverb and the echoes as they do with here. Strong influence on the style of singing that you hear in a lot of these 80s hair bands. I cannot get enough of the acoustic tone, especially when they turn it up and pan it to the right ear. No energy lost on this one. I give it a 9.
For really changing up the tone, I gave it an 8.
This is a tribute to the former project that we talked about in the beginning with the same name. Also a tribute to the roots of prog that they came from, with the complex melody and lots of technicality that we hear throughout the song. Heavier than what we've seen. Most of the record has much more of a mainstream appeal. This one definitely has more of a classic rock vibe to it.
This song won them a Grammy for Best Instrumental because it was originally a 20-minute song that they cut to 2 minutes. For the album. Yeah.
I didn't even know that. Can I have the 20-minute version?
I didn't
Apple Music?
I can't find
too much to ask?
For what it gave in the 2 minutes, I was intrigued. I think they really needed to play more of it.
I believe it has a lot of Queen influence, not just from the vocal style, which we talked about on earlier tracks, but also musically in this one. Definitely has an upbeat feel, but selection of keyboard patches kind of puts a massive timestamp on the song. I can see myself walking into a 70s or 80s bar and seeing Beyonce from Austin Powers rolling around on rollerblades to this song.
And it has a different approach than the other songs on the album. It's got a very laid-back, vocal-heavy mix. The instruments were mixed beautifully into the background.
Very clear they're trying to go for a more mainstream appeal in this one, just like we saw for most of it, but this is like with a heavy pop hand. Bang! Strange place to do it also after Cinema and Changes, which just progged the shit out of everyone. All the simple cavemen have already tuned out by this time. Still a solid trackless contribution. Diversifies the record, so I give it a 6.5.
I give it a 7.5.
The synth strings, again, do date the song, but matched with the guitar nicely. The return to the traditional style after the departure on the previous track was interesting, too. This was about a memorable performance that they had in Ohio, where it was 126 degrees, but they still had a blast performing.
Holy crap.
Strong radio appeal, again. I do much prefer what we saw in the beginning, again, because I am the prog purist.
It was a somewhat quiet synth intro, but it was a great one, as usual. More prominent bass line from Chris. He was one of the great bass players. He used a pick, but because he is fantastic, you have to let it slide.
And then they got that fucking guy, what's his name? Gary Weinrib.
You think they get someone more, notable?
The fun they were having in Ohio seeps through with the energy and enthusiasm they perform with, so I give it a 7.
A 7.5.
If there were a song representative of Yes's influence on future music, specifically the 80s, it would be this one. Pick any White Snake song, and it sounds like an orgy between this and Van Halen. I guarantee you.
It has a dull bass note that really ties in the tone for it as you have Alan comes in and matches it, mixed with the powerful synth backup. It's a steady, simple beat, but one that fits the pace of the song perfectly. A thing that was really interesting for me was the second half was a very heavy instrumental sound, which was
absolutely
very interesting to see, because I was like, whoa, like, when did this change to Dream Theater?
Yeah, it was a nice return to the heavier edge, which I much prefer, that we saw with Cinema, specifically the guitar tone, I think, did that. Only one song to go already, and Yes has invented the 80s 8 times, so I give it a 7.5.
7.
The pan flute with the bells are a nice intro, especially when joined by the vocals. It truly has the feel of an album closer as well.
It really does, and it's like a steady epic that continues to build upon itself throughout.
We've seen that a lot with some of our favorite bands, like even Maiden and Dream Theater and Rush. They all like to close off the album with a longer prog-style epic as a send-off. The soft hi-hat work on the drum stands out in a big way with the rest of the keys and the guitar.
It's another song that has a large emphasis on vocal harmony, while the drums and the bass keep a steady backbone. I think Chris and Alan worked together really well.
This is definitely the song that they played during the end credits of that Jesus Man movie.
Hey, Scotty. Jesus Man.
Hey, Billy. Jesus man. It also includes one of the best guitar solos, I think, on the record, midway through with a rapid-fire note. Strong finish to a strong album, so I give it an 8.
Great addition to the album, so I give it a 7.
Overall, it's easy to see how influential this record is, as you can hear it very closely following this record with a lot of the hair groups and even a lot of the prog groups to come afterwards, like Tool, Dream Theater, and really any prog group that came after 1983.
Another grandfather group that really helped inspire the music that we know and love today. They really helped reinvent the music scene, especially for what was being made at the time. And I know we picked an album that was later on in their career, but I think it was a good one to really establish because it shows they can come off a breakup and continue to create wonderful music.
Found it interesting too that unlike Rush and Dream Theater and other groups that we've followed in the past, these guys don't really have too much of a cult following too. I mean, I know they have a huge following, but most of their fans are like, oh yeah, I listen to those guys. Yes, it's not like a, oh my god, yes.
I don't think I've ever seen a Yes t-shirt or like a Yes poster.
Yeah. Well, you're gonna see one back here next week. I give this record an 8.5.
Overall, I'd have to give it an 8.